from that moment on, it catapulted my career from basically hand to mouth to the world stage. And I was on, Oprah twice and Larry King twice and the Today Show once a month for numerous months running, and everybody wanted a piece of me. And that was really a blessing. And I thought, well, I've worked hard all these years. I say that I worked for 20 years to become an overnight success.
Welcome to Insights into Success. We're with your host Paul Dodds. We hope to educate, inspire and motivate you to achieve your own personal success. We talk to guests from all around the world from a variety of walks of life to hear the realities of their own journey to success. What challenges have they faced? How have they coped with failure? And what have been the keys or will be the keys to their own success? In our Read to Succeed interviews, we talk books that have inspired our guests, and for some, they share their secrets to marketing success. Join us as we give you insights into success.
Well, welcome to Insights into Success, where our special guest today is none other than James Arthur Ray. Now, when I look at his bio, it includes a description such as a New York best-selling author, philosopher, consultant, has worked with over 1 million people in 146 countries through his coaching and leadership programs, and is an author of 6 books. I have to say, when you read that out, that's pretty hard to beat. I mean, if I got to a point where people could say that about me, I'd be like, wow, I've really done something, but I can't say anything like that. So I'm in awe for a start of that description. But can you, in your own words, so tell me a little bit about who you are and how you like people to see you?
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment, Paul. And I will just tell you, um, part of that is the fact that I've been around for a long time. So I've been at this for a long time, and so some of that is chronology and number of years writing and in the industry and all those type of things. How I like people to see me, my prime objective is to help create independent thinkers. And I think critical thinking and independent thinking is so vital in today's world. And what we don't have to, but what I believe we must to empower ourselves become is independent of the controlling narrative and the things that people tell us are right or wrong or that we can or cannot do. And so that's our primary objective in our business, is to help create independent thinkers and to help people take their power back. And that happens in business, it happens in the personal life. Uh, and I've had a lot of experience in business consulting, all the way back to my career at AT&T, where I was a C-suite executive consultant at AT&T School of Business. And one of the things that consistently arises, Paul, is regardless of whether I'm working with an entrepreneur or working with a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, then I'm always going to be working on the individual, because your psychology always drives your strategy. And that's really important. Your psychology drives your strategy. And what most people are looking for, in my experience in today's world, is give me new strategies. Tell me how to market, tell me how to sell, tell me how to position myself, all those kinds of things. But the reality is that I can give you all kinds of strategies, but if your internal drivers, aka your psychology, is not empowered and powerful, then you're not going to apply them. You might apply them short term, but they're not going to stick. So hopefully that answers your question. Most of the work I do, even with CEOs, and I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of very successful people, as well as startups, is that they've got to change their internal drivers first, and that's part of being an independent thinker.
Yeah, and I think, with my podcast, the thing I'm wanting to do there is to talk to people that have gone through life and achieved goals to understand the psychology involved, because I believe that your mindset is everything in the outcomes in your life. And most of us struggle with that, to harness the potential energy within ourselves, to direct it in the manner that we, you know, should, in order to achieve the goals that we might have, or aspirations we may have in terms of our future in this world. So, yeah, so I'm very interested for you to share it with that regard. So, what I'm wanting to do though is get a little bit of a background on you to understand your psychology and how you overcame some of those challenges that you had. But I think the first thing I'm just purely curious to know. I mean, you were featured in the book The Secret, in the recording of it. How did that come about? How did you go from working as an executive in a corporate to ending up being involved with the book The Secret?
Well, it was a long journey, and it was what I believe to be divine intervention, and that may resonate with you as a viewer and listener or not, but that's what I believe nonetheless. And I was part of a mastermind group at the time, and I'd been struggling for a long time. I've been in the entrepreneurial arena for well over 40 years, and so it's excuse me, for over 30 years. And so I've been through all the ups and downs. I've played entrepreneurial solitaire. And for those of you who are entrepreneurs out there, you may know what that is. You take all your credit cards and you throw them out on the bed and you try to figure out which one has a balance left on it so you can make your payments for this month. And I've been on the skinny branches. I've lived on faith sandwiches and hope cookies. I've been through it all the ups and downs, and that's part of the journey. That's part of what has to happen. And so, um, I was in a mastermind group with a group of individuals at the time who were in a similar industry, and I spoke before this 3-day mastermind event, and I flew in late. And when I arrived, they there was a lot of buzz going on, and the people there told me that there was a producer there shooting by the name of Rhonda Byrne, and she had a vision for a documentary, and everybody in the group, as you might imagine, wanted to be a part of it. And by the way, we received no remuneration for that at all,
Right.
none. Now, we got remuneration long term on the back end, which is part of being
Sure.
an entrepreneur, but it was all a labor of love. And so I got to be shot for that movie as well as a myriad of other individuals, and they chose just a handful of people to be in it, and I was fortunate enough to be one of those. And so um, from that moment on, it catapulted my career from basically hand to mouth to the world stage. And I was on, Oprah twice and Larry King twice and the Today Show once a month for numerous months running, and everybody wanted a piece of me. And that was really a blessing. And I thought, well, I've worked hard all these years. I say that I worked for 20 years to become an overnight success. And
Yeah.
and I blew up into the world arena, and everyone wanted a piece of me, wanted me on their shows and all these kinds of things. And I thought I'd finally arrived. Well, that's a dangerous place to be. And
Mhm.
I would say this to any entrepreneur: if you believe you've arrived, you may have likely arrived, most likely have arrived at a very, very dangerous place, because nothing stays the same. It just doesn't. And I don't know how much you know, Paul, about my history, but in 2009, I was at the top of my game. I was worth north of $20 million. I had built an Inc. 500, $10 million company. I had all these other accolades going on. And then I was involved in a horrible, horrible accident in 2009 in a 5-day retreat in the desert of Sedona. And I'll shorten the story, but it was quite a lengthy journey. And I talk about this in great depth and detail in my book, The Business of Redemption, because it I went from the pinnacle to the pit. I literally, we had at the end of this 5-day event, which was a very intensive week of hard work and diving deep into those psychological issues that drive behavior and bringing those to the forefront of our mind so we can heal them, release them, and move forward in life and integrate those things. And so it was a very emotional week. It was an arduous week. And at the end, we had this experiential learning opportunity called a sweat lodge. And if any of the viewers were around at the time and remember, they probably remember the story because what happened on that day, and it was the fifth time we'd done it, 5 years in a row, and it always was a highlight, because we did all this hard work all week long, and it was an opportunity for all the participants to take the hard work, metaphorically, that they had done all week long and take it into an experiential learning opportunity that would push their buttons, just like their business would when they went home, because they were almost all entrepreneurs with very few exceptions. And so very successful, by the way, dentists, doctors, lawyers. And so um, what happened in that fateful day in October of 2009 is that 3 participants died in that sweat lodge. And, what's even more unfortunate is that we still don't, for a fact, know what caused it, and we never will because the state, frankly, didn't follow up on the forensics. And this is all documented evidence.
Yeah.
They decided very early that it was my fault and I'd made it too hot, even though nobody was in there and we had no thermometer in there. I'd made it too hot. And so long story short, they they charged me with a crime, and they charged me with a really trumped up crime, manslaughter, which is intentional harm. Now, that blew my mind because I ask any of you who are entrepreneurs to think about how many of us would think for a nanosecond that we could intentionally harm our clients and stay in business. It's
Yeah.
just
Makes no
illogical.
sense.
No sense at all. Anyone who was thinking clearly knew it was a horrible accident, and it was. It broke my heart. It was the antithesis of everything I'd ever lived for or stood for. And so, nonetheless, I was acquitted after a 4-year trial, 4-month trial, excuse me, of manslaughter because the jury couldn't find one shred of evidence for intentional harm because it wasn't there. It was an accident. But what um, I also was, I believe, was the brunt. I was kind of a harbinger for the weaponization of the legal system, which we're experiencing a lot as we view things in the world today. And I believe that literally God gave me that experience to help prepare me for what's going on in the world today, because who better to help you get through some of these most horrendous challenges that you're dealing with, which most people are, than someone who's been through it. Because I lost not only 3 people I cared about, which would have been more than enough, but I lost my Inc. 500 company. I lost my dream home. I lost my life savings. I lost my reputation. I lost all my friends. They disappeared, um, like a ghost. And it was a really sobering and painful experience. But they went up to manslaughter because in the legal system, there's a lesser inclusive called negligence. And negligence basically says that some things were overlooked. I wish they hadn't have been. Some things could have been done better. God, I wish they would have been. And so that's what I got charged with, and I ended up going to prison for 2 years, and I came out in 2013, and I was standing in the middle in 2013. just 11 years ago,
Yeah.
of the Arizona desert, and I'd lost 40 pounds I didn't need to lose. I was in horrible physical condition. I I was alone. I was homeless, and I was $20 million in debt. 20 million and homeless, and so I had to get my head on. I really had to decide, what is the rest of my life going to be devoted to, and what's it going to be about? And as I stood there in the desert, I did some deep internal processing and contemplation, and I realized that I severely needed to change courses, which in many, many ways. And, we can talk about those ways if you like, but one of those is that I believe, and this is one of my latest book is called God, Money, and Sex, how to understand and master the three human dilemmas. And I believe those are the three human dilemmas. And I believe that that's what's driving a lot of the behavior in today's world. I don't think there's any of us who would say that things aren't pretty chaotic right now in the world,
Sure.
regardless of the aisle side you're on. It's not about the
Sure.
aisle side. It's and so one of the things that I believe is a big problem, and I talk about this in God, Money, and Sex, is that I had to get back to my heart, and that's God. I had to get back to fundamental principles, and I had gotten seduced, which is really easy to do when you're supposedly worth north of 20 million, and you're living in a 7,500 square foot estate in Beverly Hills, and all these things that we think are so glamorous. They're not, by the way, and we can talk about that too. But nonetheless, um, I'd gotten seduced into that life of money and materialism, and I had to realize in the desert that I needed to break free from that, and I needed to get back to morality and principle and value and virtue, and decide what was important for me in life and what I was going to stand for and what I was going to live the rest of my life going after. And from that point, there's a lot of factors that we can talk about, a lot of characteristics, but it's basically taking it a day at a time, one step at a time, and just refusing to quit, just refusing to quit. The forces of resistance must give way to he or she who refuses to give up. They must give way. If you refuse to give up, there's no choice. They will give way eventually, and it takes a long time sometimes, um, but much longer than we ever would want. But nonetheless, that's what builds character and strength. So hopefully, I condense that as best as possible.
Yeah, no, you've done an amazing job. What I want to understand a little bit is your mindset before and after the incident. And you talk in one of the things I watched about the difference between, or the importance of having a mission versus having goals. And I'm just wondering, before the incident, did you have a mission then? And if you did, what it was? Or was it just goal focused, as in, becoming well known and being financially successful?
No, it wasn't the latter. It was the former. I did have a mission, and I asked God in 2006 to help me have a larger, broader, deeper impact in the world. And I would challenge each of us to be careful what we ask for, because
I've experienced that.
yeah, I'm sure you have, because most of us have, if we're really honest, because if I had known that what I was asking for, well, let me back up, because when I asked for that, that's when things blew up, and in a good way, and I thought, well, I've arrived. God has answered my prayers, and I'm having this big impact, and I'm working with over 1 million people from 146 countries, and I've kind of earned it. It's taken me 20 years to become an overnight success, and I've really worked hard and lived hand to mouth for a number of years. and this is my reward. Well, that's a dangerous place to be. It really is, because what I didn't know, and had I known, and in retrospect, had I known, I may not have asked for that. Um, but I'm grateful that I did now because of the lessons it has brought me through a lot of pain. But nonetheless, I had a mission to have this greater, deeper, broader impact, positive impact on the world. And it certainly seemed like that came to fruition. But I realized that I had gotten seduced into the collective mindset, the the collective narrative of, to do that, you have to have over 1 million people. You have to be making a bundle of money. You have to be hugely successful and well known and all those things. And now I know that's just not true. I'm probably more infamous now than I am famous. And at one point I was somewhat famous. I'm probably one of the most controversial figures in leadership and performance in today's world, and there's still a lot of haters, not nearly as much as there used to be. But all these 12 years later, there's still haters. Some people, that's what haters do. They hate. And trolls troll and
Yeah.
on and on and on. And so I had to learn to come to terms with that. And I did. And now it just kind of rolls off my back like water off a duck. But it took me a long time to get there. And so I realize now that you cannot measure success, and this is one of the biggest insights into success, if I may steal your show's title, but it's my experience, is you cannot measure success in monetary terms. You just
No.
can't. And if you look at the greatest of greats throughout history, whether, and I'm talking about people um, like Plato and Socrates and the Christ and the Buddha, and on and on, those people who really made, in my opinion, a huge impact on the world that is still affecting us to this day. Not as much as it should be or as it used to be, because we've gotten away from fundamental principles. But nonetheless, you can't measure that in monetary terms. You just can't. The fact is, if you're going to, so many people, Paul, and I'm sure you hear this in the younger generations, oh, I want to make an impact. I want to make a difference in the world. Well, let me tell you something. If you want to make a difference, you have to do something different. If you're chasing the planes and the watches and the cars and all the bling, you're doing the same old thing that everybody else is on social media. Is going to get you a bunch of followers and a bunch of likes, but you're not making a difference.
No.
You're playing the game. And I, to a large degree, got sucked into playing the game. And so I had to escape that. And that's the big difference now. I still have a mission, and I'm very committed to it. But I also recognize that I can't measure that in monetary terms or material terms. Now, there's nothing wrong with money, and there's nothing wrong with nice things. I like nice things, but when you're defined by those things, then you literally become owned by those things. And that's
Absolutely.
where, yeah, I mean, it became very apparent to me in 2009, 10, 11, when I was supposedly worth north of 20 million. And literally, Paul, it was gone in a matter of months. Gone.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, foreclosures and just legal fees and on and on. And so I had to ask myself, was I ever really worth that in monetary terms? The answer is no. And I don't care who you are. Oh, I'm a billionaire. Well, guess what? It can be taken away, because nothing in this world is permanent. The only things that are permanent, and the only things that have true and lasting value, are those things which can never be lost or taken away. Now, they can be given away, if you're very unwise, you can give them away, but they can't be lost and they can't be taken away. And those are the things that are internal. They're not external.
So, how did you manage on those darkest of dark days? Like after you got out of prison, I mean, I'm sure you must have had a lot of days where you really questioned how you were going to get out of this and rebuild yourself. How did you manage that?
1 hour, 1 day at a time. And I would be totally dishonest if I told you it was easy. It wasn't easy. I would be totally dishonest if I told you that it happened like that. It didn't happen like that. You know, I I had to I went from being the king of the hill in many circles to having, a full team and all kinds of people who took care of all the little details of my life that I didn't deal with, and I just dealt with the high level things. And to someone who had all dumped right in my lap, all of it. And it was very stressful. It was incredibly heavy. And again, you know, being a guy who was buying multi-million dollar properties to even get to the point I was homeless, literally homeless. And so I had to move in with my parents at 54 years of age, which nobody wants to do as an adult, but much less at 54 and be 20 million in debt. But that's where I was. Fortunately, I I met my wife very, very early on, and she had gone through horrendous situations as a escaping refugee from Iran during the war, and and she's got quite a story as well, and that prepared her when she met me. She said she heard me speak for the very first time, and she she said she remembered me from The Secret, and I was billed as this guy from The Secret, and the only reason she recognized me because I didn't have any gray hair in The Secret, which I have plenty of it now, but she recognized my smile. She didn't recognize me until I smiled, and I had long hair, and I was not in the best physical condition. I was just out of prison, but she heard me speak, and I was very, very raw and real, and it resonated with her because of what she'd just been through in a very ugly divorce and so on and so forth in her early childhood experiences. But that gave her the strength to literally save my life. She saw something in me, and because of her experience in that country, she said she looked me up and she saw what Wikipedia has to say about me, which it still does, by the way. Wikipedia is not my friend. And but it is what it is. And she said something doesn't jive here because what they're saying on Wikipedia and the man I met are not the same person. And I really wasn't. I really wasn't. My heart was always in the right place, even when I was at the top. Um, my strategy sometimes not so much, and my seductions not so much, but my heart was in the right place, and so now, hopefully, I was beginning to align my heart with my strategies, and it resonated with her, and she came to work with me, and I'll tell you that's one thing. If you're struggling today, and you have someone that believes in you and can be there for you, then it's one of the greatest gifts that you can ever have. And you better cherish that person because that person is rare. And I had that, thank God, literally thank God. Um, but we've climbed together now for going on 12 years uh, through a lot of thick and thin, more thin than thick, and it's been an arduous climb, but it's been great because we built our relationship through hell, and we weren't a couple at first. we were just working together, and then we eventually became a couple, and several years ago we got married, and so that's one thing. The other thing is I think you have to have a really really clear vision of where you're going and what you choose to contribute to the world. And you have to be committed to that, and you have to be persistent. Perseverance and persistence are not sexy terms, but they're almost they are invaluable for an entrepreneur. Perseverance is the ability to keep moving forward when you feel like you can't. And there's been so many times like that, Paul, um,
Mm.
over the last 12 years, but you just keep going. And then the other thing that I believe is really, if I can give you three things for an entrepreneur: perseverance. Number two is, or clarity of purpose would be number one, perseverance, number two. Number three would be utilization. And what you have to develop the ability to do is to utilize every single thing that comes at you to your benefit. Now, way easier said than done. But the fact is, we don't grow the most when we're making tons of money and we're smelling the fine wine and the sweet perfume. We grow the most in the crucible of challenge. When we're in the crucible of challenge, that's what tells us what we're made of. That's what reminds us of the backbone we do or do not have, and the endurance that we're able to muster up. And that's utilization, to take everything that comes at you and to say, this is here for my benefit. And I can even say that about prison. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want to do it again.
No,
The thing
I can understand that.
I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But nonetheless, I'm grateful for it. I literally am grateful for it because I learned so much. I grew so much. What better way to practice the things that I had taught for years than to be literally sent to my own personal hell, and to have to, you know, swim my way through that. And then finally, I think another great quality, which would be the fourth. So we have purpose, we
Yeah,
have clarity of purpose, and then we have, perseverance. How could I forget that?
yeah,
We have utilization, and then we have delayed gratification. Delayed gratification is the best gratification. So many people in today's world want instant gratification, particularly the younger generations. I can't tell you how many people have come to us, to Bear Spot and us, and say, "Hey, we're going to work with you," and we say, "Okay," and they'll say, "Well, I'm going to give this 18 months, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll find something else." And I say, "No, I don't think we're going to work together because 18 months is nothing." And some people would even say 6 months, particularly, younger generation. 6 months is an eternity. Why am I not a
yeah,
millionaire yet? Well,
yeah,
it just doesn't work that way. Delayed gratification is the best gratification, and you have to be willing to pay the price today for the things that you will experience much later in your tomorrows. And and you don't if you get instant gratification, it's a curse. Fast success is a curse because it doesn't give you the opportunity to develop the mental toughness and the emotional strength that it takes to succeed. It doesn't give you the opportunity to develop the stamina and the endurance and the perseverance that you need to succeed. When you get it so quickly, then you don't develop those things. And then when it's gone, which it will be because nothing is permanent in this world. I don't care who you are or where you are. And so many people learned that in 2020. You know, you can't, nobody is immunized from the instability and the impermanence of this world. And I know we don't like that, but that's a fact. And the sooner you embrace it, the sooner you'll be happy, wealthy, and fulfilled. And so that delayed gratification says my gratification comes from doing the work. I'm not doing it to get X amount of money. I'm not doing it to be famous. I'm not doing it for some kind of result. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do, and I'm going to enjoy the doing. And when you can master that, Paul, you really got something going for you. I can promise.
I think, yeah, just touching on that is, I think one of the things I'm trying to learn and to implement is just enjoy every day, make the most of every day. Don't hold back your happiness to achieving some goal in the future. That you need to just immerse yourself in the day and find joy in every step along the journey rather than waiting to, completion of a goal before you suddenly are allowed to enjoy yourself. That you need to enjoy every day, make the most of every day.
I couldn't agree more. I've had some really great mentors. I've had 6 major mentors in my life. I've had business mentors, I've had spiritual mentors, I've had mystical mentors, and one of my great mentors was a Toltec shaman in Peru, who I studied with for a number of years. And I'd go back and forth to Peru, and he and I went to Machu Picchu, and we trekked up Salcantay, which is the highest peak in Peru. It's about 17,000 feet. And I went on this trekking journey with him up to the peak of Salcantay, and the metaphor of the journey was that you would meet the part of yourself that you had left behind on this journey. Now, some people would try to take that literal, who are really, the cloud surfing kind of individuals, and I'm not that person. It's more of a metaphor because the part you left behind are the parts that you haven't learned to love and embrace and integrate within you. And so I met that part of myself, the whiny victim part of myself, climbing Salcantay for weeks at altitude where I could barely breathe, and my calves cramped so badly that it would bring tears to my eyes, and I didn't think I could go on. And every step was an arduous effort. And it took 2 weeks to climb past Glacier to the
Wow.
peak of Walkentai, and we would camp on Glacier, and I mean, I've got so many stories I could tell, but here's the point. When I summited Salcantay, first of all, here's something you need to write down as a listener or a viewer. The closer you get to the summit, the harder the climb. Now, we want to think differently. Oh, when I make
Absolutely.
when I make X amount of money, then everything's going to be easier. No, when I was making, my company was generating 10 million, I was pocketing 4 million every single year. My life was so complicated, and I had so many legal meetings and so many accounting meetings and so many people pulling at me, and I was on the road over 250 days a year. And you think, oh my God, I'm going to make $4 million a year and I'm going to be on easy street. No, the closer you get to the summit, the harder the climb. And this was true of Salcantay. I could see the summit at one point after what seemed like an eternity of 2 weeks at altitude where I could barely breathe. But as I saw that, and I literally felt like I couldn't go on, and it was sheer willpower. But I finally summited, and it was beautiful. I could see forever across Peru, and it was above the cloud line, and it was just amazing. But here's what I realized. If someone would have dropped me there but in a helicopter,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been nearly the same experience
No.
because it was the challenge and the difficulty and the work that I had to go through that made the summit the summit. It wasn't the summit. Now here's the point to your point. It's not about the goal. Every single one of us has achieved a goal. at least one, maybe small, maybe large. But once you get a goal, what's it time for? Another goal.
Another one. Yeah.
Maybe you celebrate for a nanosecond or a minute or whatever, but it's time for another goal because it's not about the goal. It's about the person you have to become to achieve that goal. And if you can tap into the becoming, like you said, every single day, I want to go to sleep tonight. I get up at 3 a.m. every single day. And people go, 3 a.m. Holy.
Crazy.
Yeah, well, maybe, but nonetheless, I've been doing that for years. I used to be 4, but now it's 3, and there's a whole host of reasons why I do that because it's part of my discipline and it's part of my practices. But nonetheless, um, I want to go to bed tonight, uh, totally exhausted. So what time is it here now? It's going on 3 o'clock. So I've been going 12 hours already today and almost just shy of. And I want to go to bed every single night totally exhausted because when I go to bed totally exhausted, I know I've given my best. I say, this has been a good day. If I go to bed, I never have insomnia, never, and I always read at night. That's part of my practice too, is I read something empowering before I go to sleep every single night, because the fact is, psychologically, the last thing you give to your unconscious before you go to sleep at night is what it has to deal with for the next 6, 8 hours that you sleep. What do most people do before they go to bed? They watch Netflix. Well, my wife and I canceled Netflix because I don't agree with their programming. That's my personal
Yeah.
values. And I don't find a lot of things of value there. So we just canceled it. And and nonetheless, if that's what I'm putting into my mind before I go to bed, it's a wonder that I wake up the next morning and I'm exhausted and I'm frustrated and I'm not inspired, because I'm putting garbage into my mind on a regular basis. I choose to put gems into my mind before I go to bed. But sometimes, here's the point, I want to go to bed exhausted. And sometimes I am so exhausted that I'll be reading, and my wife reads too. She does the same thing. But um, and I'll fall asleep and I won't realize I'm falling asleep because I'm pretty tired. And I'll wake up because a book drops and it either hits my dog on the head and she jumps up, or my wife goes, "Come on, honey, turn off the light." But I know it's been a good day because I've given my all. I've left it all on the field. I haven't held back. I haven't done just what it takes to get by. I've given 100%. And when you can do that, then you're living a meaningful life. It's irrespective of how much money you're making, irrespective of how many people agree with you or disagree with you. You're living a meaningful life. You're giving everything you have to something you believe in. And that's what it's really all about, Paul.
Yeah, and I just wonder, and what your life would have been like if you had not had that experience back in 2009, how you would be different as a person. I mean, obviously, you'd want to not have those people lose their lives. So putting that to the side, but the richness of your experience since that, the depth of which you've had to live, strikes me, you've gone to levels that otherwise you would not have gone to. And I just wonder how different your life would be and how different you would be as a person if you had not gone through that struggle or a similar struggle in your life.
It's a really great question, and I'll tell you, Paul, I'm impressed because I do a lot of podcasts. I get invited to be on a lot of them, and you're the first get host who's ever asked that question. And I think I've contemplated that question a lot. I
Mm.
really have, and my life would be 180 degrees different. I know that for a fact. First thing is I wouldn't be married to the most amazing woman on the planet. Now, if you're married as a viewer, or you, Paul, I don't know if you're married or
Yeah.
single, but if you're married, you probably disagree with me that I'm not married to the most amazing woman on the planet, and you should disagree with me, but the fact is you're wrong. So I am married to the most amazing woman on the planet because she told me, if you were that guy, there's a documentary that CNN put together on my life called Enlighten Us. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was on Netflix for a while, of all places, and it's definitely on YouTube, etc. But um, I look back now and I realize that I had to change. I really believed, Paul, and my heart was genuine. I've done all this hard work to help people, and now God and life have given me this reward. And so now over 1 million people from 146, 147 countries are coming to me to ask me how to have a better life. And I've kind of got it all figured out. Well, be careful. Be careful
Yeah.
because that's when life came along and went, "Bzz, figure this one out." And so without having that tremendous fall, that crash, which, is coming up upon us in our seasons here quickly, in today's world, but both literally and metaphorically, is in my opinion. But nonetheless, without that, I if things would have continued, which they wouldn't have, because there was too many things that were in turmoil in the world in 2009 and 2010. If you remember back and you look at the real estate market and things, how they were going back then, that if they had continued, then I probably would have continued to think, well, you've arrived, you've got it all figured out and you've got all the answers. But God had bigger plans for me, and God said, "Hey, no, you don't have it figured out. You've barely scratched the surface. And by the way, you've gotten caught up in your own press, and you've been seduced by the collective narrative, and it's time for you to step back and to become a different person." And that's the great gift that comes, you know, the devil in your life is most often God disguised in work clothes. And that's the work and the painful experiences that I had to go through, because the fact is, every and please hear me as a viewer, every significant breakthrough is preceded by a breakdown. It cannot be otherwise. That's what we're experiencing in our world right now. It's a breakdown. The old system is not working anymore, and it quite frankly hasn't worked for a long, long time. And we tend to think, oh, it's just happened in the last 3 years. No, it hasn't. It's been sneaking up on us for a long, long time. It's just been more um, covert, and it's becoming more overt in today's times. But it's been happening for a long, long time, all the way back to the behavioralist movement, where we disengaged from God and from sacred principles and got into humanism. And we started, and humanism basically says, I'm skeptical about religion and I'm skeptical about spiritual things, and human and humanity is all that really matters. Well, look at where that's gotten us. It certainly doesn't seem to be working well for me, and yet it's very, very, very seductive. I'm not judgmental because I got pulled into it too, and I'm so glad to have escaped that prison, if you will, and to see things much more clearly. And that would have never happened without the breakdown. The old system, the old James Arthur Ray had to fall to create a space for a new emergence. If there's not a space, there's nothing for a new emergent to come through. And hopefully that makes sense to you. It's a great question. Thank you for asking that.
I thank you. I can't help but feel a way I'd describe your experience to me is you worked hard, no question. That you worked hard to achieve what you did. And in monetary terms, you might have been rich, but I can't help but feel that you're so much richer now. whether you are in numbers in a bank is not the point, but just as a person in terms of your life and what you've now been through and had to overcome. I just can't help but think your life is so much richer as a consequence of that experience.
Well, I you're spot on, and you're a unique human being for recognizing that because very few people can escape the chains of what we've been programmed into and continue to be programmed into to even think in those terms. But you're right. I mean, I, I'll just give you a couple of examples. I was on the road over 250 days a year. I was living out of a suitcase and out of a hotel. I was single. I had a 7,500 square foot estate in Beverly Hills. As a single guy, what the heck do you need with 7,500 square feet as a single guy? It was just crazy. And I didn't have intimate relationship. I certainly didn't have Beersheba in my life. I I had I did have a relationship with God, but it wasn't nearly as deep and strong as it is now. Um, I wasn't nearly as clear as how I am now about who I am and why I am and what I'm going to do with the remainder of my days. And I have no desire to retire. I really don't. I think God sends us all here for a reason, and the whole idea of retiring is just I think it's faulty logic. I think we all are here to contribute in some way, some fashion. Now, it doesn't have to be the way I do it or that you do it, Paul, um,
Mm.
but we're all here to contribute. Some people are here to contribute as great parents, and God knows we need them. The family unit has been pretty much destroyed in today's world. Um, a lot of people are here to contribute by putting out really valuable products, because that's what we're here to do, to provide value to the world. And so on and so forth. There's no position, oh, he wrote 6 books, a New York Times best-selling author. Okay, that's great. And I'm grateful for it. And yet, is that any better than someone who is the very best um, at customer service that they could possibly be? I don't think so. We all have great gifts and we're here to use them. The greatest gift that God has given you is your unlimited potential. And your greatest gift back to God is to utilize it, not to be gifted with something through equity or entitlement, but to earn it by investing in yourself and applying yourself and becoming the very best you can be in whatever it is you're here to do. And there's nothing that's more or less valuable if you're following your heart and you're doing and then you got to be careful with that one too, Paul, because so many times, people want to tell me what they want. And the reality is what they want is what they've been told they should want. They've been programmed by society at large or by their parents or by their friends or whatever on what's valuable and what's not valuable. I mean, why is it more valuable to have my own airplane than it is to have a caring and compassionate heart? And that may not resonate with a lot of viewers, but the fact is it's not more valuable. In fact, I believe it's less valuable. And I look at these people who are talking about, and there's these social media influencers who are talking about escaping the matrix, but they have 43 sports cars. Well, it sure looks to me, man, that you're caught right up in the matrix. I mean, 43, why? So you can drive a different car every day for a month and a half? I mean, what are you going to do with 43 sports cars? A plane. I got I almost bought a plane, and back when I was on top, because I was traveling so much and I thought this would be way more convenient. And I've always had a prudence, which is a virtue. And I went and penciled it out and priced it out, and I could afford it. And yet I talked to a friend who who owned a plane, and he was a pilot. And he said, "James, take my advice, don't buy a plane." I said, "What do you mean? You're a pilot. You have your own plane." He goes, "I know. Don't buy a plane." He says, "It's kind of like a boat. You know, it's the
Yeah.
first day you ride, it's great, and the second best day is when you sell it." He said, "You know, the tires always wear out and they're super expensive, and the maintenance is crazy expensive. And when you fly from Henderson, Nevada, where we are, um, let's say to Orlando, then you not only have the fuel costs, particularly in today's world, to consider, then you ground it and you have to pay ground time, and you also have to pay the pilot's salary and his meals and his hotel for the whole day, whole time you're on the ground. So let's say you're there for a 5-day event or whatever. Well, you got to pay him every single day, although he's just cooling his heels, and it just is crazy expensive, and you can't make it pencil. And so I was prudent enough, even though I could have afforded it at the time, to go, no. And so when I see these influencers go, look at my plane, look at my watch, look at my Bentley, I don't feel impressed. I feel sad because I know what that life is like. And I can promise you, and this is going to be shocking to some of your viewers, but I can promise you it's true. I've worked with more multimillionaires and billionaires. And the only people who worry more about money than the poor are the rich, the financially rich. I'm not talking life rich. I'm talking financially rich,
Mm.
because the more you have to lose. And the financially rich are always running on the treadmill, afraid that they're not going to be able to sustain their high level of lifestyle. And they're afraid they're going to lose it. And that's not that's not a great place to live. You know, I told you I was on the road over 250 days a year. It was exhausting, you
Yeah.
know, and I had a really nice condo right on the ocean in Kona, Hawaii, the Big Island. And I hadn't been there in over 2 years because I couldn't say no. I had so many expenses. People say, "Hey, we need to come here. We need to do this. We need to do that." And I was like, "Okay, okay, okay." And I couldn't step back and slow down enough because I needed to continue to generate on the hamster wheel. And so lots of great awakenings that come, and the whole crash and burn that I went through was a gift in disguise because it leveled everything. Could I have ever just walked away and from my $10 million business and 7 real estate properties and all that, all the holdings and accoutrements that I had? Probably not. I mean, who knows? But life took it away.
Mm.
And when it was gone, it was like, okay, now I get a chance to rebuild once again with greater understanding and greater awareness.
I think that the cynics in the world would listen to a story such as yours, or one similar, and just respond that all you're trying to do is make good of a bad situation. But in my opinion, that's simply not the case. Yes, it could be the case. People could just go, oh, well, try and plaster over it and pretend that, it's all a good thing because they don't want to face what they've lost. But I truly believe in situations such as yours, and other people that have had different but not dissimilar experiences, that's actually the honest assessment is that you are truly richer for it. At the time, you don't feel like it, you don't think it, and it takes a long time, I suspect. But you come to the realization that you like yourself better as a person because of the experience, and that you are richer in your personality, what you can give back, etc., because of it.
I I totally agree. Let's just say, let's go to the skeptical side of the equation and say that I am just trying to make the best out of a bad situation. And what are you going to do when life knocks you sideways and the big black truck drives up in front of all of our homes eventually? None of us is immunized. So I believe you come out of those situations either bitter and angry, or you come out grateful and more awake and aware. And I choose the latter, you know,
Mm,
because I could choose bitter and angry. And trust me, I did bitter and angry
mm,
for a while, and that's not a good place to live. So even if I am just trying to make the best out of a bad situation, so what? What are you doing? You're gonna
mm.
continue to be a victim and continue to feel poor me and continue to be bitter and angry? Where's that gonna get you? It's not gonna get you anywhere, but just deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. And so, um, I do believe, though, also what you said is true, is that, those of us who fall down and get back up, and that's key, and get back up, are
Yeah.
stronger and wiser than those who never fell, because you learn how to get back up, and that's an invaluable lesson in life.
Absolutely. And I guess one thing that I always like to say to people is nothing positive comes from a negative. If you want positivity in life, you've got to be positive.
Yeah, yeah, and let me give you my take on positive thinking, because I spend a lot of time in the whole genre of positive thinking and all that. And so many people believe that positive thinking is expecting the best. I would say to you, it's not. That's illusion. Expecting the best is illusion. True positive thinking is accepting that what is happening is the best for my future betterment and growth. When I can accept that what is happening is the best, then I learn. We go all the way back to those four fundamentals that we talked about earlier. That utilization. I learn how to utilize that adversity for greater strength and greater perseverance and greater creativity and innovation. Because you know, would you rather be an individual who has fought the beast and to some degree at least overcome the beast? Or would you rather work with an individual who's a book reader? And don't get me wrong, I like reading books, but so many people are out there today giving book reports, and they have no depth. You can tell they have no depth of experience and
Mm,
and personal life behind it. They're just giving book reports, and they're regurgitating things that they've heard over and over and over again, and it sounds so mundane, and it sounds so Pollyanna and so unrealistic. But I believe when you talk to someone and you, more importantly, interact with someone who really has been in the arena and has the scars to prove it.
yeah.
I want my mentors to have a lot of scars, because scars are a symbol of your strength. And when they have the scars to prove it, that's the person I wanna hang on to, not the person who's the most eloquent or most well-spoken or most intelligent or any of those things. That really means nothing in the grand scheme.
Mm. No, I couldn't agree with you more. Now, unfortunately, we've run out of time, and there's so much more I'd like to have spoken to you about. I'd like to have spoken about independent thinking. I also would like to talk to you a bit more about books, etc. And also, one thing I did want to briefly touch on, I really like when you're talking about really that people, I believe that everyone should be seen as an equal, and that we all need to be treated equally, and that we all have a gift. The challenge is for all of us to find that gift. And I think that if we could treat everyone the same, we'd be a lot better place. And anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I would love to talk to you for longer. And maybe we can catch up another time, because there's a whole lot more I'm sure we could talk about. But for this time, it's been a real pleasure and an honor to speak to you. So thank you so much for giving up your time.
My pleasure. And if we have just a minute, I'd
Yeah,
like to give a gift to your viewers, if that's okay with you.
absolutely.
Uh,
Go for it.
if they'll go to Harmonic Wealth Global, which is the name of our company, harmonicwealthglobal.com/freedom. I've created, and you talk about independent thinking, I've created a free downloadable um, uh, blueprint of called the Freedom Blueprint, and I would love for your people to get a copy of that. And then if they're interested in staying in contact with us, they'll be able to do it through Harmonic Wealth Global as well. But harmonicwealthglobal.com/freedom.
All right. Thank you for that. We'll put that in the notes too, with the podcast when we publish it, both on Spotify, Apple, and also on our website as well. So we'll include that information. But in the meantime, it's been an absolute pleasure, and look forward to staying in touch. And I certainly will be checking out that material for myself as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul. God bless. Keep doing what you're
All right.
doing.